Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining today's webinar, where we'll be shedding a light on a hidden side of living with hepatitis B. I'm Chris Wingrove. I'm the head of communications with the World Hepatitis Alliance. And today I'm joined by an exceptional panel of people whose lives have been impacted by stigma and discrimination. All of our panelists took part in our hepatitis B stigma report, which we launched last month. We'll put a link to that report in the chat if you haven't seen it. In today's session, we'll hear about their experiences and discuss the ways that we can overcome stigma and discrimination. If you have any comments throughout the webinar or questions on the discussion, please leave them in the chat and we'll get to them. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce the panel. Firstly, we have Lian Tran. Lian is an epidemiologist and PhD scholar at the WHO Collaborating Centre for Viral Hepatitis at the Doherty Institute in Melbourne, Australia. Her current research is on hepatitis B in primary care. Lian is also currently the WHO regional board member for the WePro region. Also joining us is Dee Lee. Dee is one of the most active advocates who promotes human rights for the people living with hepatitis. In 2009, he started a campaign to fight job discrimination in the labor-intensive factories. He has led a team who have visited more than 400 factories, working with them to eliminate discriminatory policies and provide education and a hotline to stop any discrimination in the future. And finally, we have Sydney Bowe. Sydney is an early childhood educator. She has been in Australia studying, working and living for almost 13 years. In 2019, she joined Hep Victoria for a short period of time and got nominated as a Hep hero for advocating and spreading knowledge and awareness of hepatitis B among people in the community in Australia. So first, I want to come to Lian's story to discuss her experiences of stigma and discrimination. And to kick that story off, we'll play a short video which explains Lian's story.
The doctor told me that, look, you have hepatitis B, so you cannot go overseas. No one at all from my village had that opportunity to go overseas for study. And for sure, my parents would not be able to afford any of that. So having a scholarship to study overseas is actually a really big deal for someone from a village in the north of Vietnam. And I was lucky enough to secure a scholarship to study in Europe. And as a part of the paperwork, I have to go through a health check, and hepatitis B test is among the health check. So when I came to get the result, the doctor told me that, look, you have hepatitis B, so you cannot go overseas. And then I had to reject the scholarship just because he told me so. I don't know why, by that time, I didn't challenge him or explore more, whether what he said was correct. But look, as a first year university student, and you had no experience in life, and then you tend to trust everyone that deemed to be more superior than you, like the doctor in the hospital.
So it's a really powerful example of how discriminatory attitudes and policies impact people's lives. So Lian, do you want to take up the story from there and tell us how that experience impacted your life?
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I think this is a great opportunity for us, for people whose life was impacted by hepatitis B in various ways to share our experience, and hopefully you will see that, you will feel that. So like what I said in the video, so the discrimination actually changed my life. It changed it completely to a really different way that I thought about it. So after that, that diagnosis and that advice from the doctor, I stayed and continued my study in Vietnam and not going overseas, always thinking that it would not be on the table anymore, to go overseas. However, losing the scholarship was actually not the worst thing of that. I thought I was dying because by that time I had no idea about Hep B. And my grandmother died of liver cancer when I was a child. So I thought, and in Vietnamese, it's actually hepatitis B is red liver inflammation type B. And then that's the only link of liver. So I thought like she's died of a liver disease, and I also have a liver disease. So that's too easy to make that kind of linking the fact. And however, like oddly enough, like since I had no symptoms and I continued my study, and then a few years later, I started researching about Hep B on the internet. And it took me quite some time to actually know that I could actually live with Hep B. And then actually, Hep B has never been a problem for me clinically. I have been like living well. I'm just like having like regular health check every year, and that's it. And actually, I'm not on treatment, so I've never had to take any medicine, any pills for my Hep B. So it's just like that. So actually, all the things related to Hep B that changed my life was actually related to a stigma and discrimination, including like not knowing, not having enough like empathy, the love, and also like the fairness in life as well. So because of that, when I had a chance, I was thinking what I want to do. So like for anyone, the first one who tell a person about their diagnosis is actually their doctor. So it's really important that the doctor knows, that the doctor knows things around Hep B, like the implication about their life, both clinically and socially. So my doctor was not correct, telling me that I would not be able to go overseas. Like I don't know like how many other people like me came to him for that kind of health check and got the same advice, and then lose their opportunities to do the things that may be really hard for them to have the chance for. And then secondly, I think like I feel fortunate that I have the chance to be here, to be standing with so many people who are passionate about the lives clinically and socially of people living with Hep B, and helping people to be able to live their lives. So like I'm so happy. I just want to say to anyone living with Hep B, like think about yourself, fight yourself, and speak up. Like you need to make sure that everyone knows that Hep B is not only like a viral infection. That's our life is much more impacted by things that are not be able to treat by the medicine. So we need understanding. We need people to know that we still be able to work, we still be able to contribute. I know that like all the panelists joining us today, they will tell us a story of how amazing, like I've been with them, I have known them for a long time, and I've known like how amazing they are. So like let's hear from them. Thank you.
That's incredible, Lian. And looking back on that situation and where you are now, do you think you would have handled things differently with that experience now that you're more of an empowered person living with hepatitis B with more knowledge? Would that have helped you approach that situation differently?
I guess it's important, like you have to be confident on yourself and never blindly trust anyone, even that's the person that you think the most superior and that the person may know everything. So like yeah, no offense, but like we know that not like until now, like so like more than 20 years from when I was diagnosed, so we still have doctors not knowing about the social impact that hepatitis B can have on people's lives. So like that's also the core, like for professional and people, like yeah, people trust yourself. Like get yourself aware, like equip yourself with information that is related to the condition. And remember, Hep B impact is actually more social than clinical.
Thank you, Lian. And Dee, I want to come to you next, because you've witnessed firsthand how discriminatory policies in the workplace are implemented in China. So can you share your experiences of that and talk a little bit about how you're tackling that issue?
All right, am I allowed to share my screen?
Yeah, please.
Okay, all right. There you go. Hi, yeah, it's good to see all of you down here. The participants, I'm sure that, you know, the one of the reasons why you're here, because attention has been drawn on the, you know, hepatitis discrimination and stigma has been increasing, you know, predominantly in the last couple of years, especially for 2 years. But, you know, it doesn't exist, just like it doesn't show up 2 years ago. It's been long since hepatitis B or C or any kind of hepatitis, you know, exists in our body. So I talk a lot about my stories for many times. But the one of the things that you know, I would like to what I'm going to say to address more now in such a, you know, privileged, you know, opportunity is wanted to elaborate the topic whether or not the discrimination and the stigma can be a huge barrier for the eradication or the elimination of hepatitis before 2030, and especially when we are, you know, we are going to see the possible, you know, cure, let's say functional cure, which is I won't accept this concept for the rest of my life. So in such a critical time, is it going to be the barrier to for all of us to see to stop us to get the cure, you know, in the market for the patient at the same time? So let me show you the slides. I'm going to do that. Yep. Yeah, it's the slide is already on. It doesn't matter. So small introduction. We run a hotline in China and possibly pretty soon in in India and the ASEAN countries. What we're going to do is tackle the discrimination, working with brands like Adidas and Nike to work with the factories who make products for them. So we starting from 2009, we helped 400 factories to eliminate their you know, the job screening for the people living with hepatitis. So altogether, we can't say we helped 1.3 million, but at least we approach around like 1.3 million because all of them have seen our posters, have you know, engaged with our training. They know that discrimination is not correct; it's a wrongdoing. By the definition of law and regulation, at the same time, the public health knowledge. So we also help with, you know, 1,200, you know, we resolve 1,200 cases that involve a lot of different people at the same time who got into discrimination in their workplace. It's from the senior managers or maybe from the policy of the factories or maybe from the hospital. They've been targeted as the disease. They are the demon in the side of the factory. They have been scrutinized in a table to eat alone. This is also a very good way to drive them away without paying them the compensation for sacking them. To humiliate, the humiliation made you know, huge you know, impact to make them to go away from the factory voluntarily. So all the workplaces got this screening, stopped the job screening for them, which is all why I'm here, why I have the privilege to talk in such a, you know, important platform of the Alliance. But yeah, that's, maybe you would say that's only 2009 in China. Things have changed a lot. Let's see what's going on. So this is what happened in last month. A baby who was tested positive in the hepatitis B, you know, surface antigen. So he's the only baby, you know, who got this, you know, result, because most of the babies got vaccinated in the very beginning. Maybe there were loads of different reasons, which I'm not going to elaborate. If I have to, it's going to be a whole day. Why this baby, after vaccination, still got the, surface antigen positive. So he was not sure about the gender, but the baby was, at the age of 4, she has to eat alone in one separate table. Then most of the children's, they can have fun, they can do anything else, but he or she is not allowed to go join the crowd to eat together. And that is directly from the headmaster of the kindergarten, which is, so the parents, went to the tribal, the court to fight for this case. But at the end of the day, it's like nothing. It creates some, ripples in the newspaper, but that happened all the time, probably 100, 200 cases, which is not, go through any lawsuit. But that's what happened last month. So this is what happened last year. The hepatitis, the people living with hepatitis are not allowed to join as a gig worker to deliver the food. So one of our partners, which is EO charity, worked together with another more than 1,000 people to send the letters to the Meituan, the other gig platform for the food delivery. Finally, after months of struggling, they stopped this policy for stopping people to join the gig workers to deliver the food. But that's what happened last year. So this is a suicidal case that happened 4 years ago or 5 years ago. So she killed herself by burning the coal inside of the closet room, only because she was asked to leave the class to stay in the room separately until her disease as a hepatitis B was cured. Everybody stopped working with her, stopped talking to her, and she was left alone. Plus the effect of the depression, she killed herself in the room. This is probably one of the saddest story reported on the news, but these kind of news have been everywhere. So let's say that's only happening in China, all right? It's one of the things that happened in a country with more than 100 million people living with hepatitis. But this is what happened in India. This is what happened in Philippines. In India, the patients, or maybe the people living with hepatitis, vowing or demanding the law against the discrimination. But at the end of the day, until now, after 12 years of struggling, the politician will only comes up with bureaucratic BS to say we will bring the law against discrimination. That's been a stain point for the public health sector in the NGO sector in India. And also we can see what's down underneath. There's a Philippine law and regulation that has been has been released for a couple of years, 2 years already, as I can remember when I talked to Chris. But Muno as a hepatist in Philippines. But according to his experience, and there's numerous cases been showing up in his email box and Facebook platform to say, no way, there's nothing we can do for we are still being discriminated. With laws or without laws, things will keep going on. So maybe we should say, maybe we are not going to see any eradication. We can let's say we are here to end the hepatitis B. Having the discrimination maybe has nothing to do with the elimination of the hepatitis. But take a look at this particular case. A 34-year-old young man at the late stage of the liver cancer. He started a live TikTok for 10 days to tell the world that he's giving up the treatment of the late stage of as a liver stage of the liver cancer. So 3,000 comments show up, underneath to say, I have the same experience. I don't know what to do. I'm having the the hepatitis, I'm having the hepatitis B, but I'm not allowed to come out because I'm so afraid I will lose a job. He is not going to endure some of the treatment. It's only because he doesn't want to lose his job in the government, because in most of the governmental offices, hepatitis B were screened out to be one of them. So he doesn't want to do so. That really leads to his late stage of the cancer, liver cancer. So 10 days already, a couple of months, he died, of course, as being a patient in late stage of liver cancer. What would happen if we are going to see a functional cure or maybe a cure for hepatitis B is in the market? Is that exactly the same thing will keep showing up to stop people going out, coming out to say, I need the treatment. I don't want to be the hepatitis B patient anymore. And letting alone the stigma, that really stops us to do so. We don't need any treatment. All we have to do is, just like a normal person, because when I go for any treatment, maybe my liver will turn, from, normal to a bad situation. That is really alarming, situation for the cure of the hepatitis. I'm saying, at last, I really want to say, discrimination and stigmas are one of the biggest barriers to help the functional cure, the cure to be functional, in the market. Because at the end of the day, what if the patient are not coming out to get treated, only because coming out or maybe going to the clinic or maybe to go through some medical system is already a painful experience for him or her to do so. So I'm really want to say a holistic approach to deal with the stigma and discrimination on hepatitis against the people living with hepatitis is really demanded. We have to really have a very focused look, onto this topic, just like our report, which is going to be released soon later. Thanks.
Thank you, Dee. And you raised such important points around how stigma and discrimination that doesn't just impact the individual, but impacts health systems with people not coming forward for testing and treatment because of that stigma and discrimination that exists. You also raised that important point that this is a global problem. It isn't locally just in certain countries, it is across the world. And it manifests in different countries differently, but it is a global problem. So Sydney, I'd like to come to you next. So your own experience of discrimination occurred whilst you were applying for visa status within Australia. So can you take up the story there and tell us a bit about your experience?
Thank you, Chris. Thank you everyone for giving me a chance to join us tonight. A topic really meaningful. I'm so sorry to hear your story, Lynn. I was about to be tearful. I didn't know that's how you came across. And I felt like really sorry for the people in China too. All this experience is really intense that daily just share with us. I thought if I was still in Vietnam, people wouldn't even care about go against or discriminate people with hepatitis B, because it's really common in Vietnam and no one discriminates people with hepatitis B. So we thought it was so normal in Vietnam. That's the reason why I didn't feel anything when I was a hepatitis B person living in Vietnam before I left the country. So I got diagnosed, the first time I found out that I got hepatitis B when I was having pregnant to Billy, my son, who's now 14 years old, in 2007. The people tested me because I was just having a pregnancy test, and they just told me that I got hepatitis B. They didn't seem to be very worried about the disease, so that I didn't care. So until 2009, I got a sponsor by my family to send me here to do study and then just have a change of life and things like that. So I passed the health examination under a student visa, so I thought it wasn't a permanent thing, so that's why they just passed us easily. I didn't go to the doctor that Lian went to. So I went here and everything was fine. I extended the visa a few times. They just passed my visa without any trouble with the health examination until the time that I was eligible to do a permanent resident visa in 2016 under a work sponsorship. I had to move city to city from the city that where I was living with my family to a city that I have no one here. So I left the city, Melbourne, with my son. Was so excited for everything, and I thought I would just get a permanent resident visa like anyone else until like the visa was processing for more than 3 years. Stuck because of the health examination. They said that I didn't meet the health requirement because of my hepatitis B. I went to see the doctor here in 2000 and since 2011 just for the general health check, and my GP recommended me to see a specialist. Since then, I got to see him 2011 to 2019. He asked me to take medication, so that stage. So I took medication, but that time I wasn't eligible to get the Medicare system here in Australia because I was on temporary visa. I had to take the medication from Vietnam because it was cheaper, much cheaper than the medication here. So my parents sent the medication here for me to take, and the doctor was fine with that. However, he wanted me to try the medication here, so he asked me to joined the trial in Melbourne when I was in Melbourne in 2002. So I was like a person for a study organization in St. Vincent Hospital to use me with experience as a person to use their drug. So I joined them for about 10 months, and then that time I decided to get another baby. So I stopped. I was stuck. I didn't want it. I felt guilty, but that's my life plan here. But I didn't end up having another baby. And then I asked the doctor because I wanted to use the medication here because it's I heard that it's the better quality, but I couldn't join again the trial, the study. So then until 2016, when I applied for permanent resident visa, then the time that I was waiting, I got access to Medicare. So I pay very cheap. So because of that, when my visa got processed, they thought that I would use the medication for the rest of my life. And they calculated I would live for another 50 years. That time I was 35 years old. So they said that women would live until 85 years old. So they calculated, they said I would cost the government $200,000 something. It's just all bullshit. Yeah. And then they rejected my visa without any giving me any chance to explain about my situation. I hired a very expensive lawyer in Sydney, and I spent so much money for that. I appealed my application twice to the Minister of Immigration. They rejected me ruthlessly until I couldn't do anything. I had to pack the city. I had to left Canberra, the city that I was coming for work, come back to Melbourne just to wait for the date to leave Australia for Vietnam for good. Fortunately, on the same period of time, I got rejected the second appeal in September. October, the 4th of October, there's an international about hepatitis happening in Melbourne, and I got invited by Hepatitis Victoria to come to join the panelists with the people around the world and share my story and how it's unfair for me. I went through the whole process with the immigration. So I share my story, and before that I was on the social on the conference and media and apply and writing a petition to ask the authority people in Australia to intervene, but no one cared. Until I was exposed into the environment where all the experts about hepatitis B and around the world, they saw me in person. They heard me saying about my story. And I met my doctor, the one that I went for the trial in 2012. He actually, it's a long story. I came across him again, and I told him that we met each other at St. Vincent Hospital. You was my doctor at the trial, and then you should have my medical history there. And he came back. He was actually a friend of my other doctor, the doctor that I went to see him for 7 years. And they're all Vietnamese. They were talking to each other, and they said, Sydney didn't need to take medication for that long. 7 years in a row, I was taking medication, which I asked my doctor, could I just stop taking medication? The time that I was going on an appeal, my lawyer asked me to ask my doctor, my specialist, if he allowed me to stop taking medication. So it would reduce the cost. But he said, it's up to me. How could it up to me? He said, it's up to me. I said, no, I had to take your advice. He said, normally he wouldn't advise his patient to stop taking the medication, but because I was so desperate, he said, it's up to me. I said, no, it can't be up to me. If you say no, then I'll say no. This is my health. I can't just, because of the visa, and I just give up taking medication. I don't know, it would harmful for my body, my health, because I'm not a doctor. I had to take his advice, right? And then he said that I felt very inconfident to say, to make a decision. How could it be on me making a decision? So I said no. Then I said no. Until my story exposed onto the media, and other experts got involved, and they show him more recent research telling him that the person didn't need to take that 7 years in a row. It's now the latest study saying that you only need to take 2 years in a row and then stop and monitor your health. And he wrote a letter of support saying that to the government in the very last appeal. I could say that was the third appeal. The third appeal happened really spontaneously. I didn't even expect it. The doctor that I saw him at the trial clinic in St. Vincent Hospital, he's the one initiated to write a group letter. He wrote it at 2 a.m. in the morning. He sent it to me. He said, could you read this? And then I'll get everyone to sign. So he got all the experts about hepatitis B and the medication brands that I took, Viret, that medication company even offered me to take the medication for life without charging me anything, to see if that could help. Everyone signed in and sent it to an MP, electorate parliament person in a suburb in Melbourne. I actually approached her to ask her for help because someone else told me that she could help. She ignored my email. I'm based in Canberra and she was in Melbourne. She didn't help me until those people contacted her, emailed her, talked to her in person. She then had a conversation to the Minister of Immigration, just simple like that. And he changed his mind. And the people from his office emailed me only 3 days before I was about to leave Australia, asking me to wait for his decision. And finally, November 2019, that means 2 months after they officially rejected my second appeal, they granted me a visa as a tourist visa. It wasn't a permanent resident visa, a tourist visa, scraping all the ban and everything, letting me stay in Australia for 1 year and allow me to apply for whatever I want. So I came back to Canberra, the city that I was leaving, to look for another job, and the job, childcare job, another sponsorship employer. And I was working for 9 months through COVID 2020. It was so uncertain because I didn't know if they would hire me and sponsor me in that situation of the pandemic like that. But luckily, they could see my my hard work, my effort and everything. I've never shared anything about my story to my workplace. No one knows about this. I'm not sure if anyone knows about me on the social media, but no one mentioned about this. I've never spoken anything about this. The thing is, when I first started the company, they asked me to read the policy and procedure of the company. I saw the page. I was very happy. Hepatitis B, no exclusion. So they don't discriminate against children or people who are working in that industry with having hepatitis B. But no, I've never heard anyone talking about hepatitis in my workplace. And I've never shared anything about this. I knew that I was really confident that if I apply again for another visa, the government would never do anything like this to me. So I just need a sponsorship. And then they offered me, and I was the first person to get sponsorship from that company, which then never done it before. And they pay for me as well. So that was the success that I got.
It's an incredible story, Sydney, and I think it shows how cold that immigration process can be, especially when you're talking about looking at kind of how long they expect you to live and things like that, and not looking at you as an individual. So I think that's an incredible example of some of the impacts that stigma and discrimination has on people's lives. And I want to come to a story from Arafat. So Arafat is online, and we're hoping to speak to him after we play this short video, but he is having some internet connectivity, so we'll see how this works. But if I just share Arafat's story next.
Barely after 2 days, the husband died, and these family members were able to tell the lady not to attend the burial, and also they ended up demolishing her house where she was staying with her husband. My uncle, called Maseka Amri, was diagnosed with the liver cirrhosis, with the hepatocellular carcinoma, more or less the cancer of the liver, and this was secondary to viral hepatitis B. While on his bed, there was a myth that was brought up by the family members, saying that had been poisoned or had been bewitched by the wife. Barely after 2 days, the husband died, and these family members were able to tell the lady not to attend the burial, and also they ended up demolishing her house where she was staying with her husband. This woman was bullied, was discriminated in the community, being told that she killed the husband. But from the medical team, we had given our definitive diagnosis and post-mortem to that effect, to tell them that my uncle had viral hepatitis B infection. It's from that background that I felt, because of the knowledge gap at a high level, that some of us from the grassroots would be able to come in and maybe prescribe a solution, or join the very many voices to bring to light the information about viral hepatitis.
So that was Arafat's story. Arafat, are you able to unmute yourself and share us a little bit about how that story impacted your life? Because as well as that story illustrating how hepatitis B stigma and discrimination impacts families and communities, it also changed the course of your life and made you become a hepatitis advocate. So can you take up the story from there? Arafat, can you hear us? Looks like Arafat's having some connectivity issues there.
Okay.
Oh.
Thank you.
I think we're struggling with Arafat's connectivity there, but you can read more about Arafat's story in the Hepatitis B stigma report. Arafat, there you are. Can you hear us, and can you take up your story from there? We'll try and fix Arafat's connection as we go through the webinar. Hopefully he'll be able to join us to share a bit more about his story shortly. So in the next part of this webinar, I do want to spend some time looking at the solutions, how we can overcome some of the challenges, stigma and discrimination. I now want to share a short video from Thomas Tu, who has set up an online forum called Hep B Community that looks to connect people living with viral hepatitis together so they can share their experiences. So let me play Tom's short video.
A lot of the talk has been about the community pushing stigma and discrimination onto the affected community. As someone living with hepatitis B, before any of that can affect me, I've already done it myself. That self-stigma comes first and comes straight at that moment of being diagnosed. I'm someone that is ashamed, should be ashamed of what I have now, and all the values and burden associated with that infection is reflected in myself, in my own thoughts. And that's very difficult to overcome, because the very nature of it means I can't talk about it very easily. From my own experiences, I felt that something needed to be done to form a community, form those connections, so that people with hepatitis B can share these experiences and discuss and talk about ways of overcoming them together. Join all of these people from across the world with hepatitis B. They have felt the same experiences as me, that self-stigma. And in a way, this community has relieved some of those burdens because they're shared on the forum. And I think that's a powerful strategy to overcome a lot of the stigma that's associated with hepatitis B.
So that was Thomas Tu sharing his experiences and motivation for setting up the Hep B Community Network. So if I turn to the panel, if we take up Thomas's story, what role do you see as peer support plays in supporting people overcome some of the challenges that they face due to stigma and discrimination? Dee, do you want to kick off that one?
I'm about to unmute myself. Thanks for bringing me up. The peer support and the let's say the self-support group functions are very, very important to the people living with hepatitis. In our study, maybe it is not one particular study, but in our studies, at least 55% of the people living with hepatitis have experienced depression. 15.5% of the population, according to the other survey done by our partner, had attempted suicide. That is data from China only, but it can tell a picture probably in the world that without the peer support and the psychological support, we as people living in hepatitis would do everything we can to protect ourselves from being discriminated, but at the same time, it's a self-harm psychologically. It's just what, Thomas said in the video.
I couldn't agree more, Dee. I think that peer support really helps overcome some of those feelings of isolation and loneliness that's often expressed by people living with hepatitis. So all of you have raised awareness at the community level. So can you tell me about how awareness raising has in the community has helped to overcome stigma and discrimination where you are? So maybe Lian, do you want to start with that one? I think Lian's having a bit of connectivity. Sure, you're on mute, Lian. We're having a bit of issue with getting to Lian. There's a problem with the sound, so we'll come back to Lian. Arafat, are you able to unmute yourself now? Because I know you've done quite a lot of work about working at the community level, so we can see if Arafat's connection's working. No, it looks like we're having a few technical issues from a couple of our panelists there. But I'll move on to another question. Sydney, let's come back to your story, because your story does have a happy ending. You did manage to get your permanent residency status, and a lot of that was done through your own campaigning and awareness raising. So can you tell us a little bit about how you used your own story to raise awareness and how you set about setting up that petition that garnered so much support?
Initially, I didn't think of doing this because I've, like Dr. Thomas too, I ashamed myself. And I didn't want to expose into the community telling me, hey, I'm having hepatitis B. I wasn't that brave until the very final week that I decided to do, just because I couldn't fathom that. I couldn't imagine how our life would be in Vietnam. That gave me the push, the final straw for me to start being brave and did all the things that I've done. Started from the petition first. I just created myself on the I contacted the SBS News people, and they came to my place. They did that. So then I linked it into the, that's what the first thing. And I linked it into the petition. And then people started noticing it, and they shared it into Vietnamese community in Melbourne. So there was a lot of people knew about my story, and the person who created a Zoom meeting because he was like a person, he's a GP. I don't know him. He saw my news on SBS, and he wanted to raise awareness about this and wanted to get attention from the government, from the community to help me sign in the petition. So I started from there, and then I got more press conferences interview me. So what was it, the question again, Chris?
So what was the role in sharing your story that helped motivate others to kind of join your cause and advocate for you?
Yeah, and then the very last thing that I didn't plan that I wouldn't know about. I didn't plan to join the conference. That was the very final thing that changed everything when I was exposed. Into that, the community where the experts who know very well about hepatitis B. I think that's the last thing, and I don't know how I came across with these people, and they saw me in person, and they helped me without me even asking them to do that, because they saw the unjust and unfair in the story. They just volunteer. Everyone volunteered to do it for me. Even the drug company offered me to take the medication for life, which now I don't even need. Oh, I stopped taking the medication since then, so I'm fine now, and I changed the doctor. So that's how I got to the success like today. And but it wasn't a very it was a good news, but it wasn't the news that I wanted. I thought they would just give me direct permanent resident visa. What happened if I couldn't find a sponsorship after that 1 year period of tourist visa, and I would have to pack and leave again. So it wasn't really certain when they granted me that 1 year visa. So it wasn't a very, just an okay result. It wasn't a good result. But I had to work again after that. I had to work really hard again after that to gain the visa as I'm having it now as a sponsorship.
Yeah, I think what your story really demonstrates.
The permanent resident visa yet.
Yeah, I think what your story really demonstrates is the immense amount of sacrifice and fighting that you had to go through yourself to advocate for, to make your story be heard at the highest levels. And I think we see that globally around hepatitis. We know that policymakers can have quite cold hearts of things, but they warm up when they hear personal stories and really see the person that those policies are affecting. So I'd like to ask the panel, what messages would you give to policymakers to overcome stigma and discrimination? So Lian, maybe I'll come to you first about what messages would you give policymakers so that they can help tackle some of these issues?
Thank you very much, Chris. And yeah, and apologies that I had some problem with my connection. That's like, I mean, it's just like early evening things here in Melbourne about connection. And yes, back to the question, I think one of the way that people like us and many people caring for people living with HB regarding like impacting policymaker, we are trying to get the policy development back on the right track to actually involve people with lived experience and civil society in the development and the decision making. Sometimes, like I have been advocating, like in various levels in Australia and also like regional and internationally, and in a lot of the cases, what I found about the way that people like live, like community, affected community was involved was like in a lot of cases was just in a tokenism mechanism way. It's just like, okay, we have you on board and then it's tick. But then we are not like people with lived experience, people impacted community are not seen as expert in their lives, in what is the most important for them. And then, yes, I'm great. I'm glad. I'm feeling great, and I'm glad that affected community are being more and more involved in policy development and like speak to people with decision making power. And I'm so glad that people like you, Sydney and Dee, like your effort, like speaking up and like targeting, talking to the people that have the decision-making power. So thanks a lot for speaking up. That's the inspiration for us in advocacy.
Thanks, Lian. And Dee, can I ask you the same question? What messages would you give to policymakers?
I think when we talk about the policymakers, there are three different kinds of policymakers we need to address here. One, the policymakers in the institution where policymakers are policymakers who are responsible for the institutions. Or second would be like the opposite situation where they don't have to responsible for the constituents. And the third type is the one in the WHO. So it's easy for the predominantly for the people, the people living with hepatitis, talk to the policymaker, and the where democracy is functioning, because most of the time, I'm saying not all of the time, most of the time, not as always, but most of the time, discrimination can be put on the table and to discuss it. That's the situation, what the situation is. But in many parts of the world, that when we talk to the policymakers, we have to expose ourselves as an activist who protect the human rights for myself and the others, is already dangerous enough. So when it's always, we need to talk about some skills. We need to talk about some sort of, layer after layer, mask after mask, strategies. So this is totally different, scenario. But when we go to talk to the people in the WHO as policymakers, in my experience, when I go to the Global Health, Assembly back in 2015, when there's the 2030 and hepatitis strategy was released, I understand we don't need to hide myself anymore. We don't need to say our voice loud. The strategy is always about statistics, functions, the logics. So the tactics would be totally different, in my opinion.
Thank you so much, Dee. And then one final question to all of you. If one piece of advice would you give to people living with viral hepatitis who are impacted by stigma and discrimination? How would you advise them to go about tackling that? So Lian, can I come to you first?
Yes, I guess like what I want to tell people is that do not let hepatitis B define you, and you do not to self-stigmatize yourself. You are great.
And Sydney, can I get your final thoughts on that? Sorry, you're muted there, Sydney.
I'll say the same as Lian. I used to be ashamed of myself, and I hide my disease against someone that who I would share with them, but I still feel being judged if I share with them. But the moment that you know more about your health, you're confident about yourself, you just be brave, and you just you don't need to share everything to everyone, but at some certain level, you just feel confident and comfortable to share it with someone that you feel that they should be knowing about this. So, but being this stage, you have to know well about your health condition yourself and about the hepatitis B itself. The knowledge that you should know more about this, so you can be more confident to share it with the people and be brave.
Thank you, Sydney. And finally, Dee.
I can't agree more with Lian and Sydney. And discrimination is like a crystal gel for the people living with hepatitis, stopping us from going out to tell people, is there anything wrong about me, or maybe this is who I am. And self-stigma is something stopping you to act on your own, to help yourself, help the others. So my message would be, you don't have to ditch, who you are. All you have to do, but at the same time, you don't have to be heroic like Lian and Sydney. I know this is a painful life, painful experience for the hepatitis activist to come out and talk to the policymakers, talk to the world, talk to the media. But what I have to do is, what I'm trying to say is, try all you can to help yourself and help the others. At the minimal or maximum level you can take. Try both.
Wonderful, thanks, Dee. Sadly, that's all we have time for today. And I just want to say a thank you to our panel, Sydney, Lian, and Dee. Thank you for sharing your stories and being so open with us. And thank you for Arafat and Thomas as well for sharing their stories. And thank you all for watching. It's clear that action is needed to tackle stigma and discrimination faced by people and communities around the world impacted by hepatitis B. And if you're looking for further information on this subject, then please visit our website to view our hepatitis B stigma report. But thank you all for watching, and goodbye.